All right, let's break down a ghost story that is just chillingly modern. This isn't happening in some old, dusty castle or forgotten graveyard. No, this is about a man, his motorcycle, and the absolutely terrifying price he paid for one tiny mistake on a lonely road. I want you to really think about that for a second. That one thing you do to escape, to find a little peace. What would happen if that very thing, your sanctuary, somehow invited something terrible into your life? Well, that's the exact question at the very heart of the story we're getting into today. So let's start at the beginning, right? Before everything went so horribly wrong. See, every great horror story kicks off with a world of perfect, almost boring normalcy. And believe me, this one is no different. So let's meet our guy. So this is Aditya. And honestly, he's a completely relatable guy. He works in IT, he has a wife named Nidhi, and he lives a pretty standard life. He could be any one of us. But he does have this one particular escape. This was his thing. Every single weekend, he'd hop on his bike and just ride off into the night. And this wasn't about speed or being a daredevil. For him, it was all about finding this sense of tranquility on those empty roads. This was his sanctuary. This was the place he went to clear his head. And look, this wasn't some big secret. His wife, Nidhi, she'd even joke about it sometimes. It was just a totally established part of their lives, a core piece of who he was. Aditya was the guy who loved the open road at night. You're going to want to remember that. And that brings us to the night. The night where everything changed. This is the moment where that ordinary world starts to crack, and something else, slips right through. Okay, the trigger for all this horror is what's so terrifyingly simple. He's literally miles from anywhere, he pulls over for a break, and he eats a piece of candy. Now, in a lot of folk traditions, leaving offerings, especially food, by the side of a road can attract spirits. Aditya has absolutely no idea that he's just rung a dinner bell for the dead. The consequences hit him immediately, and they just keep getting worse. First, it's that primal, hair on the back of your neck feeling of being watched. Then, it gets physical. The bike suddenly feels heavier, like someone has literally climbed on right behind him. He sees this flicker of a figure that just isn't there, and then, bam, a profound, totally unnatural exhaustion hits him. This isn't just being tired from a long ride. This feels like a spiritual drain. He somehow manages to get to a small hotel for the night. And as he's lying there in bed, this one thought just crystallizes in his mind. And it's not a guess, it's not a fear, it's a certainty. He thinks to himself, I am not alone. Something has attached itself to him. So Aditya makes it home the next day. But that thing, it comes with him. And this, right here, is where the horror truly begins. Not out on some dark road, but in the bright, supposedly safe space of his own house, as he starts to transform into a total stranger to his own family. I mean, the change is just stark and absolutely terrifying. The confident, rational man his wife knew and loved is just gone. He's replaced by someone who's fearful and erratic. The loving husband becomes verbally abusive. He is quite literally not himself anymore. It's like there are two Adityas now, the real one and this terrifying imposter who's just wearing his face. And look at these specific changes. He starts demanding these really strange things, like the meat of a black hen. He starts performing bizarre little rituals. The man who lived for the night now fears it. And that motorcycle he cherished, it just sits there, completely untouched. And maybe most chilling of all, he talks constantly, obsessively about getting revenge. But revenge for what? So, the family does what any of us would do. They call a doctor. But after a full examination, the doctor gives them this absolutely chilling verdict. His vitals are fine. His body is perfectly healthy. The problem, he tells them, is not medical. And in that moment, they are forced to admit that they're dealing with something completely beyond the understanding of science. So, they're out of options. The family turns to an exorcist, a man named Kalicharan Maharaj. And this decision, it sets the stage for the climax of the story, a direct, head-on confrontation with the entity that has stolen Aditya. And unbelievably, the exorcist is able to identify the spirit. His name was Arun. He was the victim of a hit-and-run on that exact same road where Aditya stopped. His spirit, just filled with rage and a desperate need for vengeance, it just lingered there, until Aditya's simple act of eating a sweet unknowingly invited him in. When the exorcist confronts him, the spirit, speaking through Aditya's mouth, makes its intentions perfectly clear. This isn't some temporary visit. It says, now this body is mine. It claims ownership. It sees Aditya's body as its new vehicle to carry out its unfinished business. The exorcist comes up with a plan, and it's kind of like a form of spiritual therapy. They can't just kick the spirit out. It's way too strong, way too angry. No, they have to give it what it wants. So the plan is to return to the site of the accident, let the spirit act out its revenge on a symbolic effigy of the killer, and hopefully that catharsis will be enough to let it move on. But then the spirit adds a terrifying condition. It agrees to the ritual, but it promises that once its revenge is satisfied, it won't be leaving alone. It says, I will take him with me to the grave. Just like that, the stakes of this exorcism have become actual life or death. And that brings us to the tragic finale. The ritual goes forward, right there on that dark, deserted road. The family is hoping, praying for a miracle. But what they get is something else entirely. And here's the thing. The plan works. Arun, the spirit, attacks the effigy, screaming and burning it, finally getting its revenge. The exorcist performs the final rites, and the spirit is just violently expelled. But in that final convulsive moment, Aditya's body collapses and his head smacks hard against a rock on the ground. This is just the cruelest possible twist. I mean, they won. They saved his body from the ghost. But the man, the consciousness, the soul that they knew as Aditya, was gone. The impact had caused severe, irreversible brain damage. The aftermath is just devastating. Aditya survives, yes, but he's a blank slate. His personality, his memories, all of it just wiped away. All that remains is an empty body and this deep, instinctual fear of fire, a scar left over from the exorcism. His wife, Nidhi, is now a caregiver for the ghost of the man she married. And that leaves us with this one final haunting question. Arun, the ghost, he got his revenge on his killer, at least symbolically. But in the process, he completely destroyed Aditya's life and condemned Nidhi to a lifetime of sorrow. So you have to ask yourself, who was the final true victim of the ghost's revenge? Was it the man who just stopped to offer a sweet? Or the woman who was left to pick up all the pieces?